Hi, thanks for joining me. If you're new here, my name is Sarah and I'm a beginner artist, really diving in to nurture my love for drawing about 5 months ago and just haven't been able to stop since. But here's one of my early attempts, which was this kind of crazy looking cat. But I've been progressing by learning from tutorials on YouTube and things that have come up from, people in my life, was wondering how I am doing what I'm doing. So I thought, hey, why can't I post videos too? And I want to share some of the lessons I am learning while pursuing this passion to create with other people and maybe inspire some to also explore possibilities and what you're capable of, whether that be in creating something or academics or whatever your heart fancies, because it's really never too late. And always keep those brain cells firing, right? So if you want to learn more about me, check out my first video, but let's move on into the piece. So in this video, you're going to see a time lapse of me creating this happy little bird piece that I'm doing. I really liked it because of the colors, and there's just something about birds that is so cheerful. And I have really enjoyed working with pan pastels and pastel pencils. I like how it almost looks like a painting by the time you're finished. So a little bit more about the supplies I'm using for this piece. The paper I'm using is PastelMat paper by Fontaine. It works really well for laying pastels, but really any media I'm finding. But as far as pastels, I'm also using what's called pan pastels. They come in these little trays with a bunch of different colors. It's really smooth the way it goes down. And then I have the Sofft tools to apply that pastel. So Sofft is a brand, Sofft. You can kind of see them in the shot here. They have the blue wand, and then you can switch out the tips to clean sponges, and they have a bunch of different shapes of sponges, which I really love. In addition, I am using pastel pencils. So I have the chalk pastel pencils from I think Stabilo CarbOthello, and then the General's brand chalk pastel pencils are being used. So I already had my sketch done when I decided to record, but you will see me dab out that sketch at the beginning. I was using a kneaded eraser. That's to really lighten up the graphite, as I don't want that to impact how the pastels lay down. Once I get started, I'm really just picking the color that pops out to me, and that was the yellow, that really pretty vibrant yellow. And so I'm getting that down in the background. In this piece, the background's pretty blurry in my reference, and I like that, so I wanted to kind of keep it that way to give more focus on this beautiful bird. But first, I start by getting down the general colors of all the different greens. And as I'm laying this first layer of pastel, I'm not focused on detail really much at all. More just color placement at this point, and adding various tones for those, the grass and the leaves and the flowers, putting some of those first colors down that I'm seeing in the bird. There's, lots of grays and blues and things like that too. So just kind of getting those down so I can build on them later to add more of that dimension. This paper, this pastel paper does have a lot of texture. So you don't want to press too hard. It's almost kind of like sandpaper, and these Sofft tools are like really nice soft sponges. So if you press too hard, it will start shredding them up a bit, especially in those early layers. So I'm going back for color quite a bit. I'm going back and forth, and that's because it does get picked up so quickly by the paper, and I'm only putting little bits at a time. But I'm working, to get that first entire layer down, and then I'm going to go in with some tools to blend. I do generally just use the PanPastel for that base layer, and then my favorite blending tool is a cotton swab or Q-tip. They're cheap, and you can switch up between them to clean ones quickly as you need to go to different colors, because obviously you don't want to take one color to another area and ruin it. But that's just kind of one of my favorite parts, is this blending out, because it's just really relaxing. I don't know about you guys, but I kind of just zone out when I'm working on a piece, and it's very stress free, and your head kind of just clears, and I just really enjoy this part. but you're going to hear me mention layering a lot. It's just so important because if it's tempting to go in heavy with the color you think you want it to look like right away, but that's when it starts to look a bit flat. So I want to avoid that. So once I've blended out that base, I start using the pencils, definitely, and adding more of those smaller details and give some attention to the bird quite a bit, like smaller bits like the eye and the beak. And again, starting with lighter colors where I can to build up on. Actually, white will be one of the last colors I use to add some detail. But you just want to be careful again not to fill up the tooth of the paper too quickly either with your layers, because if you put down heavy color at first, it's going to get almost slick when it starts filling up that tooth, and then you won't be able to put any more color over it. Again, this paper has been great in allowing more layers, I'm finding, compared to some of the others, but just something to keep in mind if you can't get this paper, you know, just any pastel paper will work, but just thinking about how much you're putting down at first was definitely a lesson I learned early on with starting with pastels. It would get slick and I couldn't put it down, and then it just, you know, didn't turn out how I wanted it to. So I'm looking at my reference quite a bit here, making sure the color is going down in the same direction of the feathers, giving lots of attention to this bird. It's the, you know, centerpiece here. At one point, you might see me pull out what looks like my color key just went by there. I do reference this quite a bit to help me pick what colors I want to use, because I have found that colors look very different on paper than they do, you know, in the package. And it's no fun finding out that the color you thought you were picking isn't quite what you wanted until after you put it on the piece, and then now you're trying to erase it and fix it. So when I do make mistakes, though, I tend to like to use the Kneaded erasers on the pastels. It's like this gray, almost looks like a putty eraser. Works really great. So I'm hoping you can see, you know, as I work on the bird, the various colors that I'm putting down will really be what starts creating that texture and looking like feathers. It may look like I'm going over the same area multiple times, but that is because I'm adding different colors until I get it to where I want to be. So putting color down, blending it, adding color, blending it, going back and forth quite a bit. And it's really about, you know, amount of pressure that you're using. I'm putting very light layers, and that is, a lot of that is determined by how you hold the pencil. So, you know, right now I'm in real close to the piece on the pencil, so it's going to go down a lot darker versus you'll see me holding the pencil almost at the very end at certain points. So I'm putting just very fine pressure onto the paper. So after each layer, after I blend it with my handy dandy cotton swab, or you'll see me use a pointed blending tool at some points on some of the finer detail pieces, especially on the bird itself. I'm sure there's a technical name for that pointed tool, just not sure what it is. Sorry about that. But I'm building up as I go. Again, not too much color at the beginning. Sorry, I keep saying that, but so important. And it really allows more control too in your piece, because it's hard to go backwards once you put things down too thick. So building up slowly will help you get that control on what this is going to look like. So I would like to point out that I have to constantly remind myself not to get too detailed right away in those early layers of the piece, because you're going to blend it out and it just kind of goes away, all those little lines. So it's super tempting to rush things, and I think that's a lot of what I would do in the past before I really took the time to learn how to do some of this, and it just never looked quite polished. It didn't look very much like how I wanted it to, and I think I was just rushing things, and so I've learned to have that patience. Because this piece right here probably took me about 4 hours that I'm condensing down into this, less than 15-minute video. So yeah, gotta have some patience, but it is enjoyable, so I don't mind it at all. So eventually I will go back and forth with the PanPastels and the pencils, mainly because of what colors I had available in each. Or if I wanted to have more of a softer look in certain areas, I would use the PanPastels. I do like to pat in those PanPastels with those soft tools to really drive it into the paper a bit more. But I really like how they just glide on. I've used that a lot, like I'm showing here in the twig. And I'm hoping you can kind of see how it looks different. I know that can be hard with video, especially when sometimes it's going out of focus. I'm getting better and better at using, my recording equipment, but I apologize. And I also apologize if my hand tends to get in the way. So at this point, you might be getting a little case of deja vu, like, wait, didn't we already see this? Did she do this twice, accidentally loop the video or something? But nope, these are those additional layers that I'm talking about, where you're putting some color down and then going back and blending it out, and then coming back to it again and just really taking the time to layer up and layer up. There comes a point in a piece when I just really start to see it coming together and I get super excited and it's looking how I want it to, and I just get happy, and those are my little hearts there on the screen to show that this is that point when it was just really starting to come together for me, and really liked how it was turning out. Now I'm finishing up some of the details of that twig because it is more in focus than the background as the bird is sitting on it. So I want to be consistent that way. I purposely, again, wanted to keep that background less detailed. And it was my first attempt using pastels, 1 to do a bird and 2 to do really any type of landscape. So having that little bit more blurred background really was perfect for me right now and where I'm at. But I will definitely continue to use pastels in the future. And I've really enjoyed making this piece. I hope you liked watching it along with me, and please subscribe if you want to see more in the future. Thanks.